Hi everybody. In today's section, I will create a server, a production server, which is based on Nginx frontend as well as a Graphql backend. So basically, our application will have two main components. One is the front-end page server, and then second one is a backend database query server. And how we going to accomplish this application is that we are going to use the Docker container and the Nginx, which is a very popular the server, the HTTP server structure. And so firstly, the first step is that we are going to make our server number one, which is the Next.js frontend, as a Docker container number one. And then secondly, we are going to make the our GraphQL backend database server as Docker container number two. And then Docker container 1 and Docker container 2 will be run separately, will be run on 3001 and 3000 ports respectively in the Docker application, meaning that we will have two ports exposed on our web server, which is port 3001 serves with container number 1 Next.js frontend, and then the port 3000 as a container number 2 with the GraphQL backend server. Then when user wants to access our front-end web page, he or she will just send a HTTP request, which is which is with port 80 as a default, to the Nginx, our Nginx reverse proxy server, and our Nginx server will redirect this request to our port 3001. Then our Next.js frontend will be able to process this request, and according to what and then it will process the request according to what is the content inside the request. It might go to the GraphQL to fetch some data and then render it to the website. It might go ahead to change the data in the GraphQL server. So the first approach, the first step is making these two applications as a Docker image. Okay, so this project will based on our previous project, which is this one, Graphql JWT Next.js, and I will also make this project a GitHub project on the description, so you can download this one with here. Okay. So I will open this one. I will open my Visual Studio Code and probably go ahead and create a new window and turn on the terminal. Then we can just simply go create a new file. I will go to my directory. You can go ahead to check any directory you want, but I'm going to go to my web 2.0 directory, and then I am gonna create a new folder. Oh, I don't need to create a new folder. I just cloned the project here because I've already have the name, the same name here. So what should I do? Okay, probably I just go to the desktop. Okay, and then we just simply clone the project. And then we cd into this project. We can just create a new Visual Studio Code by using the code and the directory name, and then it will open this new Visual Studio Code with our just cloned project. Okay, and then open the terminal again, and then I might just clean up all our Git related information here. So remove Git, okay. Now we can start from scratch. So now we are going to make front end and QL server as a Docker image. So firstly, we need to create a Docker file, right? So how to make you can get the more detail about how Docker works from the Docker documentation. What we are going to do is make a Docker file to help us to build up a Docker image. So in this case, we just simply create a new file called Docker file. and go back to the documentation. Firstly, we need to define what image that we are going to use. So in this case, we are going to use node. Let's see what node we have. Docker okay, let's go for this one. Very slow. Okay, this one. So we might just use this one. It means that we are going to build the Docker image based on the Node version 17.3.0. So let's go back. And we are going to define the working directory. Okay. We can define the working directory wherever we want. For example, here. We defined it user USR app and okay, let's just do it like this. Use USR and user and app. Okay, that's it. Then we are going to copy our everything, right? We are going to copy the everything in this directory to the Docker containers this directory, and then very simply we are going to run no, probably we just cmd run run okay, run diff. Okay, it is the very simple Docker file which is just making a working directory under the user app inside the Docker container, and then secondly we copied all our local files into the Docker into the app directory in the Docker Connect container, and then we just simply run the application in the app directory. So I think this is all we need to do. Should be good. Let's try, and let's check if I have Docker installed or not. No, I don't have Docker. But no worry, we will make it on my virtual machine, because we are going to make a production server. Okay, that's it. And we copy this one, and also create the same file inside the QL server called Docker file, and pass it in. I think that is all we need. Okay. Okay. And afterward, we are going to create a new okay, so this is what the only thing we need to do with our original repository. Then next step, we are going to deploy these two servers onto our the Oracle virtual machine. So firstly, we need to, if you don't have the Oracle VPS, you can apply one for free. This is a very popular and powerful VPS service for, in this market. I think this is the most powerful free service for now. But you can also use whatever VPS you want, like Amazon or Google Cloud Platform. But what I'm going to go for the free version of Oracle. So I'm going to sign in. You can create the account here, but I'm going to sign in, probably not here, might be here. I'm going to sign into cloud, and it will ask me to use the cloud account name. I'm HappyEric77, so I'm logging in. I will need to input my password. Not working. Okay, now it is logging in. So once we get into the dashboard, I'm going to demo it from the scratch. So I will create a new computing instance. Probably not here. Again, this really not user friendly, I think. Instances. Computing filter. And create images. Okay, in this case we are going to create an instance. So we named our instance whatever whatever you want. I probably just make it like Eric. No, probably div Eric. And just if you want to make it free, you just remember to make sure that everything is with the always free eligible. Okay, so this one is Oracle. I'm not gonna use this image. We just go for the I'm not sure why. No. Oh, probably I need to select this one, AMD. No, I cannot choose the AMD because I have already have the AMD instance. I need to use the Ampere, which is the Arch 64 architecture, and we have the free, always free version with the very high capability instance option. With the memory, we can select up to 4 CPU cores and 6 GB RAM. So I think this is what we need for now, and we select this image, and we need to select the image. Okay, I just missed this one. We need to use the Ubuntu, and then I prefer to use the 20.404. Sorry. Select this image, and we need to download this SSH key so that we will be able to access this instance in our terminal. So we just set the private key. In this case, I put it on the desktop for now. Yes, public key we probably do not need that, but just in case I will also install this one on my desktop. Okay, I think that's all we need to do. Volume. Let's see some more detail options. 1 GB bandwidth. Work. volume. Okay, I think that's what we need. We just create. Or we select the smaller solution. Let's select, oh, I didn't select this one, sorry. So I select the most powerful one, and okay, I create. Okay, I cannot create. So create the instance development. Let me see what's happening. I should be able to create one arch div Eric OS3. Yeah, this is okay. So once we have our VPS created, we will be able to see the panel of our running VPS, the running VM, and the most important part that we are going to use is our public IP here, so that we will be able to access our VM through VPR, through the terminal. So remember that we have wait. We have installed, yes, we have set it here, right? Then we are going to use this key and username and pub key and is to open, right? So what we are going to do is change it to promotion, change this one, change this file's accessibility to 6, I believe 600. Let's try, and let's see if it's working. Okay, that's great, and it is working, right? And now we are already in our virtual machine, but we do not have the Docker installed, right? So we need to install our Docker. We need to get into the Docker documentation, get start, and we just search install Docker Linux. I believe the most easy way is apt get. No, Ubuntu. Okay, here. Okay, then we can simply just follow this. Let's see. I actually have. So the installation takes a little bit time, and then we are going to install. So we just simply follow the guide to install Docker line by line. So now we have seen package done. Then now we go ahead to check the next slide of installation. No installation candidate. That's quite weird. No. Okay, and start running. I think I forgot to run this line of code, so it had failed, but now it started installing. So it might some time to finish the installation because it's quite big. As you can see, there is 422 megabytes to download. Okay. It got faster than I expected, I believe. Now it has installed it. Let's see if it is actually running. We can check system control status Docker to check, and you can see the Docker is running normally. Okay, so it means that we can start using the Docker command line tool. As you can see, Docker, when we type in Docker, and then you can see the many Docker, the method that we can use, and then we can check the version of Docker. Okay, so that's it, and the next step is to get into our directory. We need to create a project directory. Okay, and then get into the projects directory, and we can just simply clone our project here. Oh no, and well, do remember that we have make this change, right, in the different repository, and we better, before doing the change, let's create a new terminal here. Okay, now let's get back to our local environment first, and then we create two Docker file for the front end and Graphql, and there is one thing that we need to do is a port, I think. Let's go check the document again to see if I miss anything. Okay, I believe there is a port. No. Okay, no worry, I think we don't need to define the port. But remember, in this port, in this Docker container, we will need to define which port is running on which local port, which container port is running, is direct to which local environment port. So in this case, we will need to define it. In this case, we need to define this port is 3001. I mean, I know this one is now kind of confusing, but we will get to know that, you will get to know that later when we get into the port mapping. And for the front end, we will going to indicate the 3001 as a GraphQL port, right? Okay, I think that's it. After changing the port, we just create a new repository. Let's see, it is the Nginx and Docker, right? And we make it public, create repository, and then we need to git add remote add region, this one, right? Git. Oh, we need to init the git first because we just delete the .init file, and then now we can do the git remote add, and now we just need to commit the change. We just called it init project. Then we git push origin master, right? Git push origin master, right? Git I think I make it wrong, but anyway, I make it origin, not origin. So just anyway, we make it origin. Okay, git push origin master. Okay, now as you can see, we have something here. Now it is with the Docker file, and let's go back to our virtual machine of Oracle, and we can clone this project. Let's clone this project. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now we get into the project, and so firstly we probably deploy our front end first, and we use the sudo docker build t, and we can name it as front end. Now as you can see, we use the build command to make use of the Docker file to build up our Docker image, and then when we execute this command, and then it will start downloading because it's from Node 17.3.0. it will download the relative images, and then it will take some time for the first time because we will need to download the Node image first, and then all our application will be built on top of these images. Okay, now this image is built, so we can see what we can use this command to see what image that we have now. Now we have the front end, which is the one we defined, right? And then another one is the Node.js image, which is the one that we defined on the top of the first line of the doc file, which means our old application will be built on top of the Node 17.3.0. That means the Docker will need to download this image first, and then our application will be deployed on top of this. That is why we can see the node image here. So anyway, let's run the Docker sudo docker run. This is important part. Remember that this application will be run on the 3000 port, so we can just define 3000. This is the local port, and this is container port. Okay, now the Docker is running. Let's see. We can use the sudo docker ps to see what container is running. But it seems that our container is not running because I think we forgot to do one more tag, which is restart equal to always, and then let's see it again. I think there must be some problem because as you can see, the created 8 seconds ago, but it keep restarting, meaning there must be problem. So let's see the log of this one, and then we can see there might be some problem. Yarn run. Next, not found. It doesn't install the node dependency for us, so I think we will need to, what we forgot is to run the yarn install first, and then we should do it here first, and then the Docker can install the dependency for us. Let's do it for both Docker file, and in this case we need to, let's stop the container first. This one. Okay, the container is stopped already, so we will going to go to our local host, local machine, and then push our change to cloud, so that we can pull this new change to our VPS. sorry, keep doing typo, sorry. Okay, now we have already pushed. Now we need to pull it to our GPS machine. Okay. Okay. Let's get back to front end again. Okay. Then because we screwed up the original Docker image, right? So we can just, this one is not working anymore. We can just delete it. Before deleting image, we need to delete the container first. Oh dear. Let's see if we still have container left. No, so we can go ahead to see if we can remove our image. Okay, now the image has already been removed. Let's build up a new one with our newly pulled project. Now I start building. After building up, we will need to do exactly the same thing. This time it takes a little bit more time because the container, the Docker file will ask our container to install all the dependency inside the our Node.js. So it takes more time to install. For me, for my computing unit, it takes a little bit more because this virtual machine is kind of lack of computing power. But in your case, you might take less time to build. But anyway, it will go through later. As you can see now, it's already linking. It is now linking the dependencies. Okay, now it is done. Let's go check. Not sure if we are going to do the expose. It should be done, but it still locked my terminal here. Let's open a new one. Well, okay, now it is done. It is done. And we go for, let's go to check the Docker. Okay, now the Docker has this one. And let's go run again. Sudo docker run. Okay, let's see the log first. Well, you can see that the server has already been running. In this case, we should be able to see the page from our public IP address, right? Let's see if it is working. Right, now you can see that, right? But we cannot fetch anything because we don't have our database and our GraphQL server ready yet. Now the next step is making our GraphQL service online. So go to the QL server directory. Good. And then we will do exactly the same thing as we have done just now, like sudo docker build and we make it backend, right? It's gonna take a little bit time as well. So as you can see, it is kind of convenient to use the Docker file so that we are not, it is not necessary to just define all these command in our command line, and then when we build up a Docker image, it is kind of hassle if you just run all these things through the command line. So that Docker make this useful tool like Docker file for us to make the life much more easier. Okay, now as you can see it's already done, and what we are going to do next is going to run to check if the image already ready. Okay, so you can see the backend image already ready, and then we can go run it. Sudo docker run restart always -d-p. This one is 3001 that we just defined before, right? And backend. Okay, cool. Let's see if it is running properly. Wow, cool. You can see that everything is working fine, and then this one is our backend, and then let's check the log of our backend to see if it is working fine. Cool, and you can see the server is listening on the port 3001, and let's go back to our page to see if we can really see the GraphQL query. Very cool, you can see here the GraphQL is already done. Now everything is working properly, and then we can fetch the data still now. Well. In our port, we are going to should be able, but the point is that we defined it as the local host, right? But this is the now this application, I mean the front end and then the back end, is running in different Docker, meaning Docker treat both front end and back end as an individual application. So it will not be, this tool will not be the same local host, it will be different local host. In this case, if we define this one as the 3000 a local host, it will not be working. So what should we do is that we need to do it more specifically. It is not good, but we will find a way out later. We need to do it like this. 1.6 would directly put the public IP address, which is this one, right? Okay, now let's go back to our local machine. Well. And we need to push again. Git add git commit, change the port. Good. Then we go back to our virtual machine, the Oracle virtual machine, and then we need to stop the front end again and delete the image. Now we remove this container, and then next one we remove the image. Then we build up a new one according to what we have just pushed to the GitHub. So we need to pull again. Sorry. Okay, now it's done. We need to go back to the front end again, and then we need to build this one again. Now remember that this is just the free tier Oracle virtual machine, so the computing power is low. We only have one old CPU and 1 gigabyte of RAM, so it takes like a long time to fetch the dependency. But if you have much powerful virtual machine, it gets much faster. So I have another virtual machine with the 4 gigabyte RAM. It only takes like 10 seconds to make all this done. But in this case, if you are going, you want it free, and then it gonna be slow. Just a trade-off. Okay, I think we are almost there. now we are done with this. Let's see next. Let's see the image. Now we have front end again. We just run it. Let's go. Okay, so you can see the front end is back live, and let's see the log. Oh. So sudo, not udo. Okay, now as you can see, 3000 is ready now. Let's go ahead to see it is running. Good, it is running, and see. Okay, cool, everything is working fine. We can fetch user, and let's see if we can change user. Let's change Eric to Eric Olsen. Remember, the credential is the colorful live. Awesome. Now it changed to Eric Olsen. Now everything is working fine, and then it is already on our public address. Everything working cool. Okay. Now we have our application web front end working fine, with being able to change in the data in the database and fetching the data from our database. But you remember that we just suffered the problem that we need to tackle this string to let our container know which URL that this front end need to fetch, but it is not the proper way, right? Because there must be a much more easy way to communicate, to let these two containers communicate with each other, instead of defining all the network address manually, even though they are in the same network. In this case, we can use the Docker network. Okay, now as you can see, there are all the Docker default network here. So the normal practice is that we create a common network here, and then point the network here. For example, we create something like Nginx network as a network name, and then we put the Nginx network here, and then also we need to do the same thing in our GraphQL server as well. However, this way is the normal practice, but we are going to use the another way which will make our implementation much more easier, which is using the Docker Compose. So let's go to the documentation of the docker compose. So let's have a check. Where is it? Should be here. Overview of docker compose. Simply speaking, docker compose is just an idea that is a tool that allowed us to simultaneously execute multiple images instead of running image one by one through the command line as we have just done before. So how do we do that? Let's get into the action part. What we need to do is create a new docker compose file called docker compose YAML. So let's create it on the root of our project. And then firstly, we define the version. We just follow the documentation. Define the version. And we define the service. Service is the section that represents our container. Represent those containers that we want to execute. In this case will be front end and back end, right? So we will just define it as front end and back end. And remember that when we manually ran the front end and back end container, we have just defined it many things, many tag, so that we also need to define those things as well. So firstly, we need to define port build, right? Because we firstly need to let the Docker knows where is the actually Docker file front end. So here will be the front end located. And ports, right? We need to define the ports. In this case, it will be 3000 in the local host, and will be also 3000 in the container. Volume is the storage to be used by container, but we don't need this one for now, so we don't define this one. And link, we will need this probably, I'm not sure, but let's just do it first. Oh no, this is, sorry, the structure is already a little bit messed up, but just restructure a little bit. This one should be back end because our front end is linked with our back end. And the next one, the most importantly, is the image, right? Every container is built on top of one of the containers. So in this case, we will need to define what we defined it last time. Just a second, let me think about it. Image, probably we don't need to do that with not is it correct? Let's just try 0. Okay, this is our image. Let's move it to the top because it is the most important part. And the same thing, we also need to define exactly the same thing as we did in the front end. And this one, we need to modify it to back end, and the port needs to also redirect to 3001, and link, I am really not sure if we need this one. Let's see, link might be not because Docker compose. Okay, might be not. So it says that if we use the Docker compose, and then it will be both all the containers in the defined in the compose Docker compose can be recognized with each other through its container name. In this case is web and the db. So there is an example that instead of defining localhost, we defined it as db. Okay, link is defined here. Links allow you to define extra aliases by which a service is reachable from another service. They are not required to enable services to communicate by default. So in this case, we might need we don't need to do that. Let's remove this, and a thing we need to change is here. We might need to, according to the documentation, we might need to change it to backend, right? I believe that's all we need to do, and let's try and see if it is working. Okay, I forgot to remove the links here. Okay, so let's try if it is working. Let's go back to the local here and push it onto the GitHub again. And Docker compose. YAML git push origin master. Okay, then let's get back to our Oracle virtual machine and then get back to the root, project root, then pull the project from GitHub. Okay, then we need to stop the container, current container, and remove all that, and create a new container with our modified project. Okay, then double check if everything had been done correctly. Now frontend is removed from our running Docker, and frontend is also not in our image list, so everything is working fine. Then we are going to build a new Docker container for our front end. Okay. Oh, sorry, we need to remove everything because we are going to make use of our Docker compose, so that we don't need to manually execute the Docker run for each container one by one, each image one by one. So let's remove the backend as well. Sudo docker stop and sudo docker remove container and sudo docker remove image. Okay, let's see if everything is done. Container, running container, every container, there is nothing. And let's see if there is any image here. Sorry, sudo docker ls. Oh, sorry, again, image ls. Okay, so bus front-end and backend are removed. And next we are going to run bus container by our docker compose file. Compose file is located in the Nginx docker, and as you can see here it is the docker compose YAML. So what we need to do is the executing the docker compose. Firstly, we make sure if we do actually have this command. No, that will be tricky. Let's get back to the overview of docker compose, and it should be docker compose. Okay, it is my misunderstanding. It should be sudo docker compose only. No, it is still not working. Docker compose commands. Try docker compose command. If you relied on using docker compose as docker compose, you can set a compose bit. Let's try it again. Okay, I think it's not found, but install with install docker. It suggests me to do the apt installation. Okay, let's try this one. If this one is not working. No. Okay, let's try. Okay, now the docker compose. I'm not sure why I need to install it manually, but usually the docker compose come along with the docker installation. But if it is working, I don't mind. Let's try if it is working. Docker compose should be, let's check if there is version. Okay, that should be working. Let's try sudo docker compose and then the -f, meaning the file is the docker compose .yaml, and then up. Okay, this is not correct because it is actually not backend, it is actually the QL server, right? Sorry for this confusion, but this is what we need to do. Actually, the image of front end and the image of backend should not be the node 1.17.3.0. It should be front end and back end, because this image is pointing to the image that we are going to create. Okay, so we have done everything about the Docker Compose, and then let's try. And one thing I need to mention again, I am very sorry that I just missed. I was also confused by the structure which I made by myself. Let's get back to the drawing again, and you will see what I'm going to mention. Okay, not this drawing. Let's get back to draw.io. So just give me a second. Open existing drawing, and I will open my I think it's this one. Okay, do remember this one. The Docker network only creates a network inside the Docker. So in this case, this Next.js front end and GraphQL backend are first in the container, in the Docker containers. So the network share with they have the shared network between front end and back end. But in this case, after front end serves the HTML page to user, and then user going to authenticate with the password, he or she needs to send back the password through this endpoint back to our front end. In this case, the endpoint from outside of the GraphQL container will need to be indicated to our exactly the network of our public IP address. So we, in this case, because the user is sending the request from outside of the server, I mean the Oracle server, instead of inside the Docker container, we are not able to use the sharing network inside the container. We have to use the public IP address of this Oracle virtual machine. So this is the restriction. So that we are not able to use this. we have to use this. This is the real public address of the endpoint, because this request will be from outside of the world, coming all the way from the internet. So this is the constraint. Okay, so everything is done. What we need to do for now is just going back to our local computer, and then again push the changes to the GitHub. And then go back to our virtual machine of Oracle, and then pull the changes from GitHub to here. And everything is done. Okay, now we need to check the Docker status. Firstly, if there is any running container, we need to remove the current running container. Stop. It's already stopped, so we just remove this one and this one. Okay, and rm and sudo docker remove image. We do it front end and back end, and then bust these two Docker container and Docker images has been removed. And then what we need to do is do in the Docker compose and point to our Docker compose file .yaml. And very importantly, because all the image is already be removed, we need to build again here. Okay, so in this case it will build up this front end component container image and build up again the Docker image of the backend. After building up these two images, it will run these two images. Okay, let's go ahead and try. There are something wrong. Let me see. Docker compose. Oh, should be, I need to do it up, right? No, or up should be here. Oh, up should be in front of build. Okay, now as I mentioned that firstly the Docker will build up the front end Docker image for us, and then following by the building up the backend Docker images. It will take a bit time. Let's just wait for it. Okay, and it start building the backend. It should take less time building backend than building frontend. So we are almost done with it. Only 24 seconds taken. Okay, done. And as you can see here, firstly, it built it up and then successfully build up the backend and then create the Nginx backend and then create Nginx Docker frontend, and then afterward it should create a yeah, that's it. And as you can see here, the front end is running on port 3000, and then backend is running on 331 port. And then let's go back to our front end to see page if the page is working. Let's refresh this. Okay, the page is working fine now, and then we need to check if we can fetch the data. Okay, and then we can fetch the data, and then we go to see if we can change the data. Let's change to Eric Awesome as usual, and then input the credential, which is a colorful life. Okay, and then the name is changed from Eric to Eric Awesome. This is awesome.